Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. It's FBC Radio Live. It is Friday. Another Friday in the books, the last Friday in July. It's August almost, which means, John, it's NFL season. And your guy, Aaron Rodgers, took a big pay cut to help his new team, John, the New York Jets, out significantly. I don't know how Packers fans. I mean, I think Packers fans have some mixed emotions over this, but no, he takes a pretty big pay cut, which opens the door for potentially a guy like Dalvin Cook joining the crew, Gang Green, as they call him. Is that what they call him? Gang Green?
Yep.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Exactly. You know, I always wondered why that. I mean, I get the play on words, but like. You know, the thing you're playing off of isn't that great. I mean, I guess the franchise has had gangrene, for 50 years now, so 60 years. So, but no, look, I mean, this is just another example of the Jets being all in because 3 and 4 years from now, whether or not Aaron Rodgers is playing, he's going to cost a significant amount of money against the cap for this team. But that's. You know, when you're the Jets, or if you're any franchise, forget the Jets, any franchise that is going all in to win a Super Bowl, you're not thinking about years 3 and 4. You're thinking about years 1 in particular and year 2. So I guess, again, big time pay cut from Aaron Rodgers, and it's going to benefit the Jets.
Yeah, I mean, he'll benefit from this on the back end. I'm sure he's not really losing any money, but just the way they rearranged it gives them some relief. And you would think Dalvin Cook would be their target. He is supposed to meet with the Jets. He's shown interest in joining the Jets. Miami, also the Patriots may be in play. I think he ends up with the Jets. I'm sure Aaron Rodgers is speaking on his behalf because Rodgers had to play Dalvin Cook twice a year for 5 years when Cook was with Minnesota. And when he faced the Green Bay Packers, he used to torch them. He had some huge games against the Packers. So oftentimes, and we've seen this with Bill Belichick, when you play someone once or twice a year, your admiration grows for them, and eventually maybe you want them on their team. Exactly. Yeah, we can't defend the guy, so let's go get him.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's what Aaron Rodgers is putting forward. I'm going to also bring up one other player, and one of Aaron Rodgers' closest friends in all of football, if not all of life, is David Bakhtiari, the former All-Pro left tackle of the Green Bay Packers, who suffered knee injury at the end of the 2020 season and hasn't been right since, but he appears to be getting stronger. And the Packers are probably looking to clear some salary on their own because they're still paying some of what they owe Rodgers in terms of cap commitment. Maybe David Bakhtiari is on the market and he ends up being Aaron Rodgers' blindside protector because at his best, he's probably the best left tackle in football. I don't think he can play at that level anymore, but, you know, we know Rodgers likes to bring his friends along. Randall Cobb, Alan Lazard. I'm just waiting for Mercedes Lewis to show up at some point to be like a third string tight end.
He's still out there. He's still out there.
Yeah, well, he's older than I am, so they probably don't want to put too much pressure on him in training. He'll come in the final week of training camp. But I'm just throwing that out there. There's no news reporting that, but he did open up a lot of cap space that they could afford both Dalvin Cook and David Bakhtiari, and that would really tidy up the offense. We know their defense is really good. So the Jets, as you said, they're all in.
Well, and look, you have to be. If you're New York, I mean, you can't come into this thing and do this half-assed. I mean, what's the point? You know, you're committing all this to Aaron Rodgers. Now, look, again, and you know, I'll keep going to my grave believing this. He's not Tom Brady. And I'm not saying that to mean it's not meant to be insulting, John. I know it's, you know, some people might take it this way, but there's a lot of uncertainty surrounding him as well, in terms of what he can do, even at his best. Because even at his best, I mean, again, one Super Bowl and in his entire career, one appearance. And I know I saw someone on Twitter talk about, well, you know, if Aaron Rodgers would have done this for the Packers, they could have won more Super Bowls, or, you know, then you get to the hypothetical question. But then I say, well, the salary cap didn't prevent them from getting to 5 NFC championship games under Aaron Rodgers. It's not the salary cap that kept them from, you know, winning 4 of them. So, you know, even with the perfect ideal situation, he's still going to have to perform at a level that he isn't accustomed to at a certain point in the postseason if they get to that. So, so if you're the Jets, yeah, you're committing a lot to Aaron Rodgers, and he's making your team drastically better. It's the best quarterback they've had, since
ever.
Yeah.
No,
I mean, honestly, I'm like sitting here staring. I'm like,
Joe Namath would tell you that. I mean, Joe Namath up until this year has always been the greatest Jets quarterback, and he's beloved. I mean, I've said this before. I don't know if there's any other franchise in any of the four major sports who are so tied to a player who hasn't played for them for 45 years. I mean, Joe Namath left the Jets after the 1976 season, and he's still beloved by the fan base and the media, and he's still Mr. Jet, right? I mean, I know the Bruins have Bobby Orr, but the Bruins have had some success.
Well, I was
Orr left town.
I was gonna say, like, there's very few franchises that have failed this spectacularly for this long, like the Jets. So there's reason why they still cling to a star from the 60s, but that's beside the point. You're not going to get any good word out of me for about the Jets. So if anyone's out there,
there's not much out there. No, I mean, they were into a AFC Championship games a little over a decade ago with Mark Sanchez at quarterback. So, obviously they feel they have the defense, and now they have the quarterback that they can finally break through. And he's played in 5 NFC Championship games, and he hasn't really played well in any of them. In those 5 games, he has 9 touchdown passes and 8 interceptions. That's a ratio he has no other situation. Regular season, wild card games, divisional round, Super Bowl. I mean, he's generally the best in terms of touchdowns to interception ratios in the history of the sport, except in the NFC Championship games. And that's an awful big if, because those are awfully important games. They're, 5 of the 6 most important games the guy's ever played in. And he hasn't really shined in those games. So, if they get back there this year and he underperforms again, then, he's to blame, not somebody on special teams or the coach or whatever. It's him. He has to step up.
Well, and that's why I always would push back against that. Well, if Aaron Rodgers was with this, he would have won 10 Super Bowls and this. I'm like, no, like, look, you can pinpoint individual plays that might have not gone their way that ultimately decided the game. But, again, that's just kind of focusing on the very last thing you saw when, well, the reason they lost this game is more complicated than that. Did it ultimately come down to that one play? Technically, yes. But, for example, the special teams gaffe, the onside kick, like, did they lose that game because of that gaffe? Well, technically, yes. But they lost that game for a lot of other reasons, not just because of that. And excuse me. And again, that helps shape, the poor Aaron Rodgers narrative, when the reality of it is they've been to 5 NFC Championship games since 2008, the Packers. That's a pretty impressive amount. I know, again, that when you're constantly comparing things to Tom Brady and the Patriots, everything's going to look, pale in comparison. But the reality of it is 5 and 13 years or 15 year, whatever it is. That's pretty good, John. The problem is they've only won one of them. And that's not because of the salary cap. That's not because they've always had quote unquote bad defenses, which is another, narrative. It's, well, their best players just didn't perform at the highest level when they needed it the most. And that includes Aaron Rodgers. So
they're kind of like the modern day Celtics, right? Get to the conference finals and then lose, and I've compared them to the Bruins in some sense, because the Bruins won the Stanley Cup and the Packers won the Super Bowl, 4 months apart back in 2011.
Mm-hmm.
And they were both really young teams with, a brilliant young quarterback, and the Bruins had this young core, and you just assumed both teams were going to win multiple championships at some point. And to be honest with you, since that point forward, the Packers have been the second most successful franchise in football behind only the Patriots. Yet they only have that one championship to show for it. And the Bruins since that point have been right there with, I think, the Penguins, and pretty much the Penguins is the most successful team in hockey, but they only have that one Stanley Cup championship to show for it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like those two teams went off the rails. It's just they never quite finished things off. And yeah, he's going to have to play better in those big games. And he certainly hasn't. He really hasn't. I mean, you go back in 2014, that game you referenced, they're up 19-7 with 2.5 minutes left, but they should have been up, 31-7 because he threw 2 picks in key situations. They kept settling for field goals when they could have punched it in for a touchdown at any moment to really give them an insurmountable lead. And they allowed the Seahawks to get back in that game because they didn't build a big enough lead. And then when he played Brady in the NFC Championship game a couple of years ago, he was good, but he wasn't good enough. He threw an interception late in the second quarter and had a chance to run in what would have potentially been the game-tying touchdown. Instead, he threw an incompletion, and they kicked a field goal, and we know what happened from there. So, yeah, he had opportunities to step up, and he wasn't good.
Yeah, and look, I mean, this will be a big, obviously a nice. We've talked about it before. I think if anyone right now, especially like this very moment, would benefit from a second Super Bowl, it would be Aaron Rodgers in terms of big time legacy, especially since Patrick Mahomes now has a second, and he's as young as he is, so. There's a lot for Aaron Rodgers to gain by winning a second one, especially with another team and especially with a team like the Jets. So we're going to see how that eventually plays out. And again, I mean, I kind of expect Dalvin Cook to end up signing there, and we'll see what happens after that. I think this might be someone just throwing crap against the wall. But somebody also brought up the idea of Devontae Adams, and I'm like, all right, now I think we're just getting into fantasy football realm. But yeah, you never know. You never know. I mean, they might realize that Aaron Rodgers needs all the help he can get. So anyways, other news in the NFL. Unfortunately, we've had a couple injuries already. One seems a little bit more significant than the other in terms of, length of time. But Jalen Ramsey, torn meniscus, was it? I believe.
Torn meniscus.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, he's going to actually miss regular season time. I believe that's already been stated. And then Joe Burrow went down yesterday, a year and a day after his appendectomy, right? Oh, my God. See, now, you know what? Sometimes when you say something and then you think you screw it up and then you try to think through it and you just make it worse. That's exactly what just happened there. So
appendectomy, right?
Yeah.
He had his appendix removed, right?
Right. Yeah. Appendectomy. That's what I said the first time, correct? Okay. All right.
Absolutely.
All right.
Stick with that.
I'm losing my mind, Sean.
You're a little shaken up because Joe Burrow is your, long lost younger brother. So, well wishes to my second favorite quarterback in football. So, that was scary when you heard that. And again, strained calf, which sometimes can lead to Achilles problem. We saw that with Kevin Durant 4 years ago. Strained calf, missed some time, came back and blew out his Achilles. So I know the Bengals are going to have to watch that. And again, he's on the precipice of signing a huge contract because we saw Justin Herbert sign,
just a few days ago.
5 years, $262.5 million. I'm assuming Burrow's going to get more.
Mm-hmm.
He's a better quarterback. So, and we know the Bengals are notoriously cheap. So if I'm Joe Burrow, his agent, get that contract signed ASAP. And hopefully it is just a calf strain that's going to keep him out a lot of training camp. He hasn't really had a clean off season though, really, when you look at it, or a clean training camp, because his first year was COVID. So it wasn't really a training camp. Then he had the knee injury midway through his rookie season. So he had rehab that going to his second year. And then last year at the beginning of training camp was the appendectomy. And now he's dealing with the calf strain. So he hasn't been able to really be full in training camp, which just shows you again what a great quarterback the guy is, because it doesn't seem like he misses a beat. So let's just hope that he's okay.
But it may start to kind of raise a few red flags, though, because and some of these situations, obviously the appendectomy, that's unfortunate. That's not a football injury, but at such in such a short period of time, he's missed significant time, not like necessarily on the field football time, but like training camp time, practice time with some injuries. I mean, he dealt with injuries last year too. So that is something that might be a little concerning, especially for someone so young, that all of a sudden we start to see a pattern. And I don't know. And like you said, if you're the Bengals, I mean, the Bengals are cheap to begin with. So you're going to sit there and probably look for anything to try to save a few bucks to begin with. So I hope this doesn't ultimately lead to some sort of prolonged negotiation and an attempt by the Bengals to kind of save a few bucks. But I don't blame them for being maybe, slightly concerned.
Yeah, just a little bit. Obviously, the knee injury is one of those things, almost like the Brady injury back in 2008, where you're in the pocket, you step up, and you get your knee blown out. That can happen to any quarterback. The calf strain, again, just the way the guy's body is constructed. Who knows? Like, some guys are just durable. Like Brett Favre could get dumped on his head, get up smiling, and then continue to play.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are other quarterbacks that were obviously fragile. The thing about the Chargers signing Herbert's been durable, right? I mean, in the first 3 years of his career. So, that's a good thing for the Chargers and a good thing for Herbert. But I think, obviously, if you borrow, you want to get this thing signed. And let's hope it is just a calf strain and it's not a precursor to that Achilles, which is a totally different injury.
Yeah, and I think, fortunately, I think it fortunately for them, it did happen early enough in the off season that, in training camp and everything, that you can kind of slow it down, monitor it a little bit, and hope that it doesn't linger, like you said. And, again, if you're the Bengals, I mean, your season hinges on Joe Burrow. You don't have Joe Burrow, you reset and start over because, well, who do you have? I mean, what are you going to do? It's not
Tom Brady.
Hey, stop it. Stop it.
The old Joe,
all right.
The old Joe Burrow, right?
Yeah. I'm getting past the fact that he's not going to be taking snaps here over the next several months or whatever, but we'll see. Maybe he's just waiting out an injury, like an old savvy veteran, just kind of like those old guys. You never know. But yeah, so it'll obviously be worth monitoring, the Joe Burrow situation. Obviously, we know Jalen Ramsey, like I said, is going to miss time with that injury. And look, that's tough because, I mean, he's getting up there in age in terms of cornerback age. He's had, I think, a very up and down career in terms of, like, there's been times where he's been no doubt one of the two best cornerbacks in the league, but then there was a couple years where he was just average at best, and like I think that I don't know. I mean, I just don't know if this is something like he's just going to hop right back in and be, because look, the Dolphins acquired him to be one of the best cornerbacks in the league. I don't know if he's going to be that when he comes back. Certainly not right away.
He may not be the best corner on his team. I mean, Xavier Howard's really good too, right? So,
sure.
If Jalen Ramsey's right and is closer to what he was, say, in 16, 17, 18, when he was one of the 2 or 3 best corners in the league, then you have 2 shutdown corners, which is a nice thing to have in that division because you're playing Stephon Diggs twice a year, Garrett Wilson twice a year. Obviously the league is just loaded with wide receivers. But yeah, they're going to have to go in there, take a look at what the injury is, and they can either clip it, which is kind of like a short-term answer, and he comes back in October, or they go in and do the full operation, and he probably comes back in December. So that's kind of what they have to weigh at this point. But yeah, his play has slipped a little bit. He's a bigger corner too. He's like 6'1", 6'2", 210 pounds. And I don't know if those guys necessarily age as well, because if he puts on a few pounds, maybe he's not as quick and nimble as he used to be.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they went out and they got him, I believe, for a 3rd round pick. And they went out and got Vic Fangio as a defensive coordinator, which I think is a great move. He's one of the best defensive minds in all of football. So the Dolphins feel that their defense is really improved from a year ago, but obviously Jalen Ramsey is a big part of that.
Yeah, and look, the Dolphins are going to need him. I mean, that's the thing. You already listed some of the wide receivers. We know the quarterback, especially in the AFC. I mean, forget about the NFC. We're talking about the AFC, and the AFC East in particular has, a really good on paper deep lineup. I mean, when I know we joke about it, but when you consider, well, look, I think, it remains to be seen. I think about what Tua's gonna ultimately be. I mean, we've seen great from him and we've seen not so great from him. So I'm not gonna, write his name in pen as the hands down third best quarterback in this division. I mean, who knows? I got to see him on the field. But like when Mac Jones is considered the worst quarterback in the division, and look, he's a decent young quarterback. That's what we know right now. I know there's a lot of jokes out there. He's decent. I mean, that's what we know. We've seen some good, we've seen some bad. I mean, we're kind of at the breaking point. We're going to find out who he is this year. But when he's the worst, quote unquote, the division seems pretty strong because you have Josh Allen, you have Aaron Rodgers, you have Tua, you have Mac Jones. I mean, all serviceable, certainly quarterbacks at the very least. So I think it's going to be a competitive division with some good defenses and some good talent. So if you're Miami and you want to try to get it any advantage as you can, yeah, you go and you have an elite secondary because maybe that's enough to slow down the Bills offense or the Jets offense, no matter who's on it. I mean, who knows who's going to end up signing with the Jets, moving forward. So
the quarterback position in the AFC is so deep that the debate for the fifth best quarterback in the AFC, at least in my opinion, is Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence, or Lamar Jackson. I think the top four quarterbacks in the AFC are Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, and Rodgers. And I'm putting Rodgers in there because obviously I think he's going to be closer to what he was in 20 and 21, not what he was last year when he was banged up. He had the thumb injury, the rib injury, and he clearly was not
a little too much ayahuasca.
Year. Yeah, he just wasn't into it last year, right? I mean, he literally mailed it in. I mean, he threw some interceptions last year that I've never seen him throw in the past. Almost like, I don't care. I'm throwing this thing up for grabs. If my guy comes down with it, great. If he doesn't, I'm going to go to the sideline and put my coat on. So those are the four best quarterbacks in the AFC. So now you've got Herbert, Trevor Lawrence, who I'm extremely high on, and Lamar Jackson are like the next three guys. And that doesn't even factor in, the Deshaun Watson and Russell Wilson return to being closer to what they were a few years ago. And then you're talking about Tua and Mac Jones and heck, Kenny Pickett's probably the worst quarterback in the AFC North, and he ain't all that bad. He looked pretty good as a rookie. I mean, it's a loaded position in the AFC. Like, good luck picking the three quarterbacks that make the Pro Bowl. None of them will show up and play in the game, obviously. But who are the three Pro Bowl quarterbacks in the AFC? You would just think going forward it's going to be Mahomes, Burrow, and Josh Allen because those three guys seem to have separated themselves. Although I think Allen is below those guys just because he turns the ball over a bit too much. But that's my whole point being it's such a loaded position in the AFC compared to the NFC where it's like Jalen Hurts and like who's the second best quarterback in the NFC? Is it Dak? Is it Kirk Cousins? Like who is it?
Well, it's like, look, I agree that of those three, I'd probably put Josh Allen third, but I'd also say that no one is asked to do more than Josh Allen, though. And I think that's part of why maybe his turnovers are a little bit more. And I know, Chiefs fans are losing their mind right now. Oh my God, how could you say that? No, it's true. I mean, the reality of it is true because not only do they rely on him and count on him to be an elite passer, but they essentially rely on him to be their running game. And I think that has it takes a toll on a quarterback. No matter how big and strong you are, it's going to take a toll over time. So,
and the head coach is a defensive coach, right, Sean McDermott?
Oh, sure.
Whereas Zach Taylor and Andy Reid are offensive coaches for Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes, and I think that helps.
Look, I love this is one of my favorite stats. 39 touchdowns thrown at or behind the line of scrimmage for Patrick Mahomes in his career. That's 9 more than what Tom Brady has thrown since 2010. So yeah, if you're going to ask me, is it beneficial to have Andy Reid? Absolutely, because you had 9 of those such touchdowns last year, and I think either 4 or 5 of them were of the I'm just going to get the ball from the snap and drop it into my running back's hands, and that's a pass. So yeah, those numbers look nice, but it's also it's a nice benefit of having Andy Reid and someone who's willing to be like, hey, do what you got to do. We'll throw it from the 1 yard line. So, but So to me, like I said, I mean, I do think Josh Allen is number 3 on that list, but I also think he's asked to do a lot more than either of those two. Certainly more than more than Patrick Mahomes. So, but anyways, if you believe Sean Payton, though, Russell Wilson might find himself back in that mix. And I'm going to have to see it to believe it. But Sean Payton kind of went on a he answered some questions about the previous regime, and he was pretty candid about it. I don't know, again, I mean, obviously that makes him look better and gives confidence to the quarterback and the offense that they have because, well, he basically threw it all on the coaching. And look, there's some legitimacy to that. I mean, Nathaniel Hackett didn't hack it. I know, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I apologize for that.
Like Buddy Hackett.
Yeah. Just
old reference. That's a real old reference.
Yeah, I was gonna thank you for distracting the listeners from my bad joke to your ancient one. So, but yeah, he obviously couldn't bring it all together. I mean, you had fans counting down the play clock. It got so bad last year. So that's a lot on the coaching and kind of the organization aspect of it. So yeah, look, there's some legitimacy to maybe what Sean Payton is saying, and I obviously think Sean Payton's going to get the most out of Russell Wilson. But do you think there's some resurgence ahead of us with Russell Wilson, or do you think just a slight improvement is probably what we're going to see?
I think a resurgence. I also think he got kind of heavy last year, right? So he wasn't moving the way.
John, he trained 19 hours a day. How the hell could he get heavy?
Maybe part of the training was hitting the buffet. I don't know. He just looked a little heavy to me last year. And again, he's always been kind of a squat guy. He's like 5'10" and a half. He's not Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray's like 5'10" and more lift than, say, Russell Wilson. Well, Russell Wilson always had like almost felt like a running back's physique, right? Like thick legs, big butt, big arms. He looked a little heavy to me last year. I think he'll be much better than last year. Now, will he be Russell Wilson, I guess, borderline MVP candidate, even though he's never received an MVP vote, nor should have he ever received an MVP vote, the way the old system was, where you only get one vote per voter. I think he'll be better than last year. Sean Payton's a really good offensive mind, and Sean Payton will tell you that. There may be no bigger ego among head coaches than Sean Payton, who, by the way, has the same exact resume as Mike McCarthy. It's amazing. If you look at Mike McCarthy and Sean Payton, they have the exact same resume. Now, McCarthy, I think, had the better quarterback in Aaron Rodgers compared to Drew Brees. Brees is obviously, great quarterback throughout his career. And now you see Mike McCarthy actually had back-to-back 12-win seasons in Dallas. So I know we like to laugh at him, and he's kind of like Fred Flintstone, but his resume is equal to Sean Payton's. It's just, the tonality and the look of it is quite different. But I think he'll be improved this year. But again, he could be the 9th best quarterback in the AFC and still have a good year because we've seen, how many of those quarterbacks have really stepped up.
No, I no, it's true. And it's like I said, I mean, it's going to be fascinating how it plays out. And like I said, it's disappointing to go into a season personally without Tom Brady under center. But the consolation prize is it should be a gauntlet of a fight for the AFC. And then you have the NFC, which is well, it's just going well over there. It's just going just splendid. So, but we'll talk about the NFC another day. So, but thank you everyone for tuning in. That's going to do it for us today. Give us a follow on Twitter at FPC Radio Live, and of course, head over to fullpresscoverage.com and fullpresshockey.com and check out everything happening over there. And we'll be back on Monday. So, thank you everyone, and we'll talk to you then.